Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk to you about why you may not already be self-realized and how it's kind of a paradox when you consider it from the non-dual perspective. And this is the direction that I'm going to be taking this channel in more and more, into the perspective of non-duality. And the challenge with that is that what I'm trying to describe is indescribable, especially by vocabulary and language, because it transcends all of that. So bear with me while I attempt to discuss concepts and topics that are technically indescribable. So you may have been led to this video because you are a seeker and you are seeking self-realization. The reason why you may not already be self-realized and the seeking energy continues is fundamentally because of the belief and the perpetuation of the belief that you are the separate self. Because the truth of it is, you are already what you're seeking. And because of the boundless nature of the self, it also has the complete and total freedom to believe it is separate and to believe it is the separate self. So you are already what you're seeking. And that may be frustrating to hear because you're thinking to yourself, great, if I'm already what I'm seeking, then I want the illusion to be over now and I want to be fully self-realized. And commands like this are very powerful, but the reason why they may not be working for you in attaining full self-realization right in this instance is simply because the momentum and the intensity of the momentum that has been gathered up across your whole lifetime of believing you are the separate self is more powerful than the command and the desire of you wanting to be in that self-realized state right now. And so what it really is it can almost be analogized to, imagine the scenario for a second that you've had your memory wiped completely and you're in the city of Vancouver. So you're in the city of Vancouver, but you just don't realize that you're in that city already. And now there's a deep, deep down soul memory that your home is a place called Vancouver. And now not realizing that you're already there, you're already in that city, which you call home, you decide that you're going to venture out and seek this place that your soul recognizes is your home, a city called Vancouver. So you take buses, trains, cars, you even cycle from neighborhood to neighborhood. And because you can't remember the surroundings, you don't have any way to navigate the idea that you're already in Vancouver. And then finally, after so much traveling, so much cycling, so much seeking a way to find this city called Vancouver, there comes this breakthrough moment where you finally realize not only are you already there, you've never ever left. This is very similar to what self-realization is. It's simply coming into the full conscious recognition that you've always been the self. You've never been anything but the self. And the only thing that perpetuated the idea that you were the separate self, the separate character, was the belief of being that separate self. And now remember, if you're aware of this or not yet, you will be, and you will be aware of this eventually, but your physical experience in this world is a direct and can be very, very convincing reflection of your state of being and your beliefs. So if you fundamentally believe in separation and you fundamentally believe in being the separate self, then the holographic reflection in this physical reality is going to reflect that back to you, because that is your overriding state of being and that is your overriding belief system that you're carrying. And remember, everything is only just energy within this experience. And so within this physical experience, your belief system and those frequencies that comprise your beliefs are all just energy that have gathered up a certain degree of momentum, a certain intensity of momentum over the course of your lifetime and over the period of time that this belief has been fostered. So it's definitely like there's some sort of a degree of momentum that this belief has taken on over that period of time. And that's what can be completely unwound so that you can see who you really are, who you've always been, and all that there is. Then is nothing but the self. everything appearing in the hologram, anything that can be experienced, is simply a holographic reflection of, like I said, your state of being and your beliefs. So the obvious question now becomes, well, what can we do about collapsing the momentum and collapsing the frequencies that are creating the belief in being the separate self? And first of all, we need to take a look at what comprises the belief itself. So how do we form the belief that we are the separate self? And to do that, I want to look at this chart here. So the big disc in the middle is the awareness and the true self. And this awareness and true self is perceiving through a prism of light, or a hologram that you could call the physical avatar. And when we take on the belief of being this physical avatar, the illusion of separation gets projected out into the screen of experience, and then that is the reality that we navigate and experience through, completely unaware that we are the awareness behind all of it. And so what actually comprises the core belief of being the separate self? Well, the first overarching theme that leads to this belief is the veil or multiple veils. So essentially we come into this experience, and to make it a more immersive and convincing experience, and so that we're not bombarded with infinite field of information all at once, which would just completely override our experience. We wouldn't be able to have a physical experience if all of the information was available from all dimensions at the same time. It would just be completely overwhelming from the perspective of a physical avatar. So it wouldn't be able to stay focused on a physical experience. So the veil is what keeps us shielded from our true awareness in its complete totality. It's kind of like the experience of amnesia that I spoke about in the analogy of the person in Vancouver trying to find Vancouver that had their memory wiped. So the soul comes in, has a certain degree of its memory wiped, so it can have a fully immersive physical experience. So that's step one. If there were no veils present, then the true self would just be all there is, because everything would be known. And so therefore the ability to cultivate a convincing belief of being the separate self just wouldn't be possible, because there would be no veils concealing the truth from yourself. And so because of these veils, what happens at the next level is the program becomes very convincing, because in a sense we've forgotten our true nature. So the programming, if taken on, which usually is taken on because of the lack of soul memory, the programming then becomes the chief architect for our beliefs we start cultivating. And then the thing about programming is the programming is essentially neutral. But in this physical reality, what's essentially taken place is the powers that be have decided that they want to keep this knowledge for themselves for a very, very long period of time. This has been happening. So they came up with an indoctrination and programming framework to program disempowering beliefs into the avatar, would forget its true nature for as long as possible and be dependent on a system that they control. Therefore, they're able to retain all of the power within that system and within that physical experience. So that's why the programming has been predominantly negative and predominantly disempowering, because they want you to form beliefs that keep you dependent on them and keep them in power. And here's the beautiful thing about this system is it's only the belief that keeps you in a disempowered state, in a forgetful state, and it's your belief. So just as it was us who accepted the beliefs of being the separate self, maybe accepted beliefs of being disempowered, of unworthiness, and of being in a fearful state, we can unwind that so we can regain our full divine power and sovereignty of being the true self once more. And so that's why it's kind of referred to as the grand cosmic joke of awakening, because when you do come into full self-realization, what you is that not only have you returned to being the self, but you've never ever been anything but the self. You've only used that boundless freedom, that boundless energy, that boundless mind to create the belief that for a period of time, or for the purpose of creating a dreamlike but very real experience, you have formed the belief that you were a separate individual. You were something that you are actually not. And so in the non-dual space, especially the radical non-dual channels, often talk about the idea that the illusion of separation just completely collapses in on itself. And it's even deeper than that, because there's nothing that actually collapses in on itself but the idea and the belief that you ever were anything but the self is seen completely. It's almost like that belief gets completely wiped out and eradicated for good. So it's like nothing actually happens, nothing actually collapses, except that you could say that that belief in itself is gone. And once the belief is completely gone and the truth is fully seen, then that belief can never fully be bought into again. How could it be? Because you've seen the truth. It's almost like if you never knew the sun existed behind the clouds and you were always searching for the sun. Once a certain degree of cloud cover dissolves or is removed from obstructing your view of the sun, you can never ever go back to the belief of not knowing where the sun is or seeking the sun, because you know you can see it. You know for a fact where the sun is. And here's the funny thing about the concept of healing in itself. It's like you believe that to be a separate individual, and that separate individual then you could almost say is like an illusion. And then that illusion goes out in the world to seek its non-existence. And because it can't find what it's looking for, because it already is it starts doing practices in the hope that will help heal them in some way so they can find something. And so what healing is really, in my perspective and my experience, is it's simply systematically collapsing frequencies that are still existing in the belief of being a separate self. And when enough of those separate belief frequencies are collapsed back into the true self, back into the soul frequency, you could almost analogize it back to the cloud and the sun perspective, as when enough of the cloud cover has been cleared and the self is seen, or the sun is seen, then you realize that it's been there all along. It never left. It was never anywhere else. So then what more is there to do? It doesn't even matter if there's still clouds that remain. Just like in the healing perspective, it doesn't matter if there are certain patterns, behaviors, or frequencies that still exist or still arise within the physical experience, because you've already seen the self. So healing's kind of like a paradox. It's like the illusion sets out to carry out a task in order of finding something or gaining something. But really what it is it's actually the removal of layers of belief, of being the illusion itself. And so this is where one does need to be somewhat careful with how much they buy into needing to heal, because the very belief of needing to heal more and more also manifests the experience of needing to heal more and more things. And so that's why there's so many different quotes that all seem to describe the same thing when it comes to Zen, spiritual text, scriptures, anything of that nature that really points to the core of what this is talking about, is the idea of just being. The best practice you can do is just be the silence, because that is the true self. And when resting in being for long enough, what seems to happen is it collapses enough of the belief in being the separate individual that you finally get to the point of seeing the truth of who you really are. And then from there, it's this cascading effect of more and more of that belief just completely vanishes or completely erodes until you could no longer possibly buy into the idea that you are the separate individual. And so that's where meditation comes in, because meditation is a powerful practice in unwinding the momentum of being the separate individual. And so you can see clearly who you are. And then also on this channel, you'll find different healing practices, quote unquote, because undertaking these different practices to unwind the momentum of the belief in being a separate individual can be very, very powerful in clearing that illusion so you can see the truth. But just remember and keep those practices in its correct place. Those practices are the self undertaking practices to find the self. And I'm not saying that that makes it pointless. What I'm saying is that always keep in mind that you don't need to heal from anything. It's just the belief in separation that needs to be unwound. And so I'll leave it there for this video. There was a lot there that I'm trying to describe that simply can't be described. But fortunately enough, what this video really is and what this channel really is a vibrational resonance that if you've come across this video or this channel, there's a certain level of resonance that your higher self thought that you would benefit from. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come into your awareness at all. And if this has resonated at all, I would love to hear about it in the comments section. If you feel like you've got benefit out of this, feel free to subscribe so you can stay notified of when new videos get released. Because as you could probably see by the timestamps of when I release these videos, I only make these videos when I feel very, very intuitively compelled to do so. And that usually means there's going to be recipients or viewers that in some way, shape or form need that resonance on their own journey. So as you can see, this channel is going to be steering towards the idea of trying to describe the undescribable of non-duality and try and mix it in with different healing modalities and practices and how it all relates to your journey back to self-realization, which is the most important thing. Full self-realization and full embodiment in this physical experience so that your reality can then reflect that back to you and you can literally create your own version of heaven on earth. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.